HMP Woodhill holds Britain's most dangerous men, serial killers, terror plotters, prisoners, so violent they've been placed in segregation units built specifically to contain them. This is not an ordinary prison, and these are their stories. Charles Bronson was born Michael Gordon Peterson on December 6, 1952, in Luton, England. He never planned to become Britain's most notorious prisoner. His original offense was an armed robbery of a post office in 1974. He was 21 years old and sentenced to 7 years. Most people serve their time, get released, and move on. Bronson did not. He has spent almost every year since then behind bars, moved between prisons over 120 times, held in all 3 of England's high-security psychiatric hospitals, Broadmoor, Rampton, and Ashworth, and kept in solitary confinement for the vast majority of his sentence. His crimes inside the correctional system are extensive. He attacked fellow inmates without provocation. He attacked prison officers. He attempted to poison a prisoner. He took 11 hostages across 9 separate sieges over his decades of incarceration. His victims included prison governors, doctors, a deputy governor, staff members, and on one occasion his own solicitor. In 1994, he received 7 years for false imprisonment and blackmail. In 1997, he took a deputy prison governor and 3 inmates hostage and received 5 years. In 1999, he took an art teacher at HMP Hull hostage for 44 hours with a skipping rope around the man's neck after the teacher criticized his artwork. That offense resulted in a discretionary life sentence. He changed his name multiple times, from Michael Peterson to Charles Bronson, at the suggestion of a bare-knuckle boxing promoter in the East End, to Charles Ali Ahmed after a brief conversion to Islam in 2001, and to Charles Salvador in 2014 in honor of artist Salvador Dali. He has married 3 times from behind bars. His 3rd wife passed away in 2019. He has been formally diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. He was convicted of a total of offenses including armed robbery, wounding, grievous bodily harm, false imprisonment, blackmail, and making death threats. He has appeared before the parole board multiple times and been denied release every time. As of 2025, he remains at HMP Woodhill in Milton Keynes. He is 72 years old. He has been behind bars for over 50 years, longer than many people have been alive. Tommy Robinson was born Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon on November 27, 1982, in Luton, Bedfordshire. He adopted the name Tommy Robinson as a street alias and later used it as his public identity when he co-founded the English Defence League in 2009, a far-right anti-Islam street movement that became known internationally for violent demonstrations, clashes with counter-protesters, and racially charged marches through British towns and cities. His criminal record begins in April 2005 at Luton Crown Court, where he was convicted of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, and assault with intent to resist arrest. He had kicked an off-duty police officer in the head after the officer intervened in a street argument. He received a 12-month custodial sentence. He was convicted again in 2011 for leading a mass brawl involving over 100 football supporters in Luton. He was convicted of using a false passport to enter the United States. In January 2014, he received an 18-month sentence for mortgage fraud, conspiring with others to obtain a mortgage through misrepresentation from 2 British banks. He was sent to prison in May 2018 for contempt of court after live-streaming defendants in an active grooming gang trial outside Leeds Crown Court, while the jury deliberated a direct breach of reporting restrictions that risked collapsing the entire trial. He received 13 months, later quashed on procedural grounds before being retried. In July 2019, the Oldie Bailey sentenced him to 9 months for the same conduct. His cumulative record also includes harassment, stalking, and attempted cocaine dealing. His most recent conviction came on October 28, 2024, when Judge Jeremy Johnson at Woolwich Crown Court sentenced him to 18 months in prison for contempt of court. He had repeatedly broadcast a libellous film falsely accusing a Syrian refugee teenager of violent assault, continuing after a high court order explicitly banned him from making such claims. The judge described it as a planned, deliberate, and flagrant breach of court orders. He remains in custody, serving that sentence as of 2025. For 13 days, Huntley appeared on national television, helping police with their appeal for information, presenting himself as a concerned member of the community. Meanwhile, Maxine Carr, who was actually in Grimsby during the offense, provided a false alibi, claiming she had been with Huntley at the time. Their bodies were discovered on August 17, 2002. Huntley was arrested shortly after. His trial opened at the Old Bailey on November 5, 2003. 3 weeks in, Huntley changed his account and admitted the girls had passed away in his home, but claimed both deaths were accidental. The jury rejected this entirely. On December 17, 2003, they returned a majority guilty verdict on both charges. Huntley was sentenced to 2 life terms. In September 2005, a high court judge imposed a minimum tariff of 40 years before parole eligibility, meaning Huntley could not be considered for release before he was nearly 70. He never attended that hearing, having been scalded with boiling water by another inmate at Belmarsh Prison 15 days earlier. He reportedly admitted privately to his father that he had lied at trial. On March 7, 2026, Huntley passed away in hospital after sustaining a head injury during an attack by a fellow inmate at HMP Franklin in Durham. On August 19, 2014, Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command officers, operating on intelligence gathered by MI5, intercepted Zayamani on a street in East London. He was on his way to carry out an attack. In his rucksack, they found the 12-inch knife and the hammer. An ISIS flag was also recovered. He was 18 years old. He was convicted at the Central Criminal Court of engaging in conduct in preparation of terrorist acts. On March 20, 2015, Judge Timothy Pontius sentenced him to 22 years in prison, stating he had no doubt Zayamani would have carried out the attack had he not been stopped. He did not stop inside custody. On January 9, 2020, while at HMP Whitemoor, Zayamani and a fellow inmate strapped fake suicide bomb belts to their bodies and attacked a prison officer named Neil Trundle in a storeroom, using makeshift weapons. 2 other staff members who came to Trundle's aid were also injured. Zayamani was convicted of attempted murder and received a further substantial sentence. He remains incarcerated. For 13 days, Huntley appeared on national television, helping police with their appeal for information, presenting himself as a concerned member of the community. Meanwhile, Maxine Carr, who was actually in Grimsby during the offense, provided a false alibi, claiming she had been with Huntley at the time. Their bodies were discovered on August 17, 2002. Huntley was arrested shortly after. His trial opened at the Old Bailey on November 5, 2003. 3 weeks in, Huntley changed his account and admitted the girls had passed away in his home, but claimed both deaths were accidental. The jury rejected this entirely. On December 17, 2003, they returned a majority guilty verdict on both charges. Huntley was sentenced to 2 life terms. In September 2005, a high court judge imposed a minimum tariff of 40 years before parole eligibility, meaning Huntley could not be considered for release before he was nearly 70. He never attended that hearing, having been scalded with boiling water by another inmate at Belmarsh Prison 15 days earlier. He reportedly admitted privately to his father that he had lied at trial. On March 7, 2026, Huntley passed away in hospital after sustaining a head injury during an attack by a fellow inmate at HMP Franklin in Durham. On August 19, 2014, Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command officers, operating on intelligence gathered by MI5, intercepted Zayamani on a street in East London. He was on his way to carry out an attack. In his rucksack, they found the 12-inch knife and the hammer. An ISIS flag was also recovered. He was 18 years old. He was convicted at the Central Criminal Court of engaging in conduct in preparation of terrorist acts. On March 20th, 2015, Judge Timothy Pontius sentenced him to 22 years in prison, stating he had no doubt Zayamani would have carried out the attack had he not been stopped. He did not stop inside custody. On January 9, 2020, while at HMP Whitemoor, Zayamani and a fellow inmate strapped fake suicide bomb belts to their bodies and attacked a prison officer named Neil Trundle in a storeroom, using makeshift weapons. 2 other staff members who came to Trundle's aid were also injured. Zayamani was convicted of attempted murder and received a further substantial sentence. He remains incarcerated. Kamel Bourgass was born around 1973 in Algeria. He entered the United Kingdom illegally, arriving in the back of a lorry, and claimed asylum under a false name. His asylum application failed. He was never deported. Instead, he disappeared into the country, eventually becoming embedded in extremist circles in North London and attending meetings organized by Al-Muhajirun. Investigators later established he was a central figure in what became known as the Wood Green ricin plot, a plan to produce and deploy the deadly poison ricin by smearing it on door handles, car handles, and other surfaces across North London in an act of mass casualty bioterrorism. 5 handwritten pages discovered in his possession contained detailed instructions for manufacturing ricin, cyanide, and botulinum. On January 5, 2003, police raided a flat above a pharmacy in Wood Green and arrested several men. Bourgass was not present, but was later located. On January 14, 2003, police and immigration officers raided a flat in Crumpsall, North Manchester. On January 14, 2003, police and immigration officers raided a flat in Crumpsall, North Manchester. They did not expect anyone dangerous to be present. Bourgass was there. He was not immediately identified as the suspect wanted in connection with the ricin plot. Without being handcuffed, he realized officers were closing in. He punched one officer, grabbed a kitchen knife, and stabbed Detective Constable Stephen Oak 8 times in the chest and upper body. DC Oak, who was unarmed and not wearing protective clothing, passed away from his injuries. 3 other officers were also stabbed or wounded before Bourgass was overpowered. On June 29, 2004, at the Old Bailey, Bourgass was convicted of the murder of DC Oak and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum tariff of 22 years. He received an additional 15 years for the attempted offenses against the other officers. In April 2005, following a second trial specifically focused on the Wood Green plot, he was convicted of conspiracy to commit public nuisance by use of poisons or explosives and sentenced to an additional 17 years. He is currently held at HMP Wakefield, known as Monster Mansion, serving a full life term. DC Oak's family have never had the justice of a functioning death penalty. Bourgass ended an officer's life over a kitchen knife because he feared arrest for a plot he had already been building for months. Richard William Huckle was born on May 14, 1986 in Ashford, Kent. He was educated at a grammar school. By the age of 18 or 19, he had traveled to Malaysia on a gap year, presenting himself as a devout Christian, a volunteer teacher, and a freelance photographer. He returned repeatedly. Over the next 9 years, from 2006 until December 2014, he embedded himself in impoverished communities in Malaysia and Cambodia, targeting care homes, orphanages, and families who trusted him. He used that trust to gain access to children. Then he abused them, children as young as 6 months old. Huckle did not simply commit offenses. He documented them. He filmed himself. He photographed his acts. He shared the material with other offenders worldwide, through a hidden website on the dark web. He awarded himself what he called pedo points for different categories of abuse. He bragged online that children from impoverished communities were easier to target than children from wealthier backgrounds. He was compiling a 60-page manual titled Pedophiles in Poverty, Child Love Guide at the time of his arrest, designed to teach other offenders how to select individuals and avoid detection. More than 20,000 indecent images and videos were found on his devices. Investigators from Australia's task force, Argos, a specialist unit targeting online child exploitation, identified Huckle and alerted Britain's National Crime Agency. He was arrested in December 2014 at Gatwick Airport as he returned home for Christmas. He was 28 years old. In June 2016, he pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey to 71 counts of serious sexual offenses against children aged between 6 months and 12 years. Judge Peter Rook described the scale of offending as virtually unprecedented and said it was rare for any judge to sentence offending by a single person on such a scale. Huckle received 22 life sentences with a minimum term of 25 years. On October 13, 2019, just 3 years into his sentence, Huckle was found deceased in his cell at HMP Full Sutton in East Yorkshire. He had been stabbed with a makeshift blade. A fellow inmate, Paul Fitzgerald, was subsequently charged with his murder. Shafaqat Ullah Mohseni was born on May 4, 1996, and was living at Overbrook Walk, Edgware, North London, at the time of his arrest. By his late 20s, he had become the central organizer of one of the most sophisticated and prolific prison drone smuggling operations London had ever seen. The scale of what his network delivered inside British correctional facilities was described in court as operating like a commercial delivery service. Judges compared it to Uber Eats or Deliveroo. Packages containing drugs, mobile phones, and other prohibited items were flown directly to order into prison grounds in the middle of the night, targeted with precision to the exact wing where an inmate was waiting. Mohseni coordinated a network of drone pilots, co-pilots, taxi drivers, and lookouts, with drivers regularly rotated to avoid detection. The operation ran across multiple London area correctional facilities, and investigators assessed his network to be responsible for the majority of drone drops recorded across the capital. The gang deliberately operated in the hours before dawn, timed their movements around head counts and security rotations, and used flight data and phone coordination to execute drops with near-surgical precision. On February 26, 2025, law enforcement executed a covert pursuit and intercepted 4 men less than 1 mile from HMP Norwich. Mohseni was identified as the network's leader. On March 3, 2025, he and 5 co-defendants were sentenced at Harrow Crown Court. Judge James Lofthouse stated that inmates had items delivered to order as if by commercial food delivery. Shafaqatullah Mohseni, 29, received the heaviest sentence, 5 years and 3 months imprisonment for playing the leading role in the conspiracy. His co-defendants received sentences ranging from 2 years and 6 months to 2 years and 9 months. The investigation represented one of the most significant enforcement actions against organized prison contraband supply in recent Metropolitan Police history.